Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Peterson. I'm the Executive Director of Mass Waterworks Association. Thank you for joining us for our September meeting with DEP and EEA today, EPA. So I'm going to turn it over to the Commissioner and we will get going. The meeting is being recorded, as you probably just saw and heard. So with that, Commissioner, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jen, and thanks for arranging these calls. We continue to find that it's a valuable way to exchange information, and to the point that the calls are being recorded. It is our practice to post the recordings on our website after the meeting's taken place, so that it can be a reference for folks going forward. We are doing these calls on a quarterly schedule now to make sure that we're staying in touch on useful intervals. And so we'll at the end of this meeting, we'll talk about the scheduling for the next one. We're joined by Kathy Baskin, our Assistant Commissioner for Water, Yvette DePisa, Head of the Drinking Water Program, Damon Gutterman, Mike Maynard, Dwayne Levangie, Maria Pinode, and we do have Vandana Rao from EEA with us today. We're going to lump you in with the DEP folks today, Vandana, but welcome. And then we have, of course, representatives from all the regional offices to make sure we're all hearing the same things. And if there are follow-up items, we can address them timely. We begin, I believe we have Jane Downing from US EPA here. I'd like to welcome Jane and ask if there are any updates from the federal perspective she'd like to offer.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Jen, and I'm happy to provide some odds and ends today. And I know that Jen has put the websites and links out in the chat for more information, so you don't have to listen to me with trying to give you websites. On the training front, there is a EPA Region 1 Emergency Drinking Water Supply virtual workshop that's scheduled to be held on September 27th. So if you're interested in better understanding roles and responsibilities during a drinking water supply emergency, including hurricanes and earthquakes and so on, you can register for that workshop. On the guidance front, I think by now you have all seen the lead pipe inventory guidance. That was something that we were looking forward to distribute, so please check that out. You all remember that there is a deadline coming up in October 16, 2024 for all of you to complete your lead line inventories. There's also a new guidance and it's related to the pandemic. So while we have been a few years into the pandemic, there's a new pandemic resilience guide that you can check out on the website. In terms of money, in terms of grants, I want to first congratulate MassDEP and the state agencies involved with the SRF program. All of your applications are in with EPA. The IUPs are complete and they will be awarded any day now. So very exciting, unprecedented amount of money going out to water utilities and wastewater utilities. And I know it was a struggle to get it in a timely fashion, but we really appreciate all the effort there. So millions and millions of dollars. For those of you who are not on the IUP, I suggest strongly that you get prepared for next year. Again, unprecedented amount of money. And also on the WIFIA program, for those who are following the WIFIA, there are, we are beginning to accept letters of interest on WIFIA. And that started on September 6th. And there's $5.5 billion available for WIFIA loans. So another big chunk of money for all of you to consider. Finally, I know that this has been a struggle, and it's the chemical supply chain issues, the challenges that you all have faced. It's not going away. We are hearing across New England all kinds of issues, fluoride, sodium hydroxide, the chlorine chemicals, the phosphate inhibitors. They continue and will continue to continue. So I suggest you continue to do what you have always done, which is to inform Mass Waterworks and Mass DEP. We then inform headquarters There are new tools on the headquarters website, which is on your chat. And that includes, don't remember, there was a letter that was sent out by EPA years ago, which said to the chemical companies, they need to prioritize chemicals to water utilities. So you should wave that flag where it's needed and warranted. There's also tools to identify suppliers if you're in search of more suppliers. And there's a database when you all can input your own impacts into the national database. So continue to work together. We appreciate the coordination. And that's it for today. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, sorry, I had a little trouble unmuting here. But thank you for that update, and not to put you on the spot with a question that really none of us have the answer for, but are you hearing any updates about the federal rail situation? You know, we know there's, fear of an impending strike. Has there been any news since I think we all were probably hearing about it on the morning commutes today?
Yeah, nothing more beyond what I heard myself on the morning news, which is 8 out of 10 of the railroad companies have finished their negotiations, are in good shape, and there's 2 left to go. So we're being optimistic, but we're keeping our eyes on it. And even if 1 or 2 shut down, it will have an impact on chemicals. So let you know if we hear more on that.
Okay, thanks, Jane, and appreciate all the updates. We also have Mike Maynard, who is going to give us a licensing board update. Mike, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Hello to everyone. Thanks for all the work that you're doing out there. I hope you enjoyed this this summer. Time to start, harvesting all those pumpkins you planted a couple months ago. We tried to pull together just a synopsize the certified operator, what went on at the Board of Certification last year. And so this would be for 2021. So 1/1/21 through 12/31/21. There were, these are just some statistics. So there were 44 systems last year during 2021 that did not have an operator at one point in time. A lot of those issues were resolved versus 28 the previous year. So it was 44 to 28. The Board of Certification issued 14 provisional or technical temporary emergency certification certificates. And that was the same as 2020 as well as 2021. When we looked at the exam, the pass fail rate on the examinations for 20 versus 21, what we're seeing is there was a drop in the passing rate by 3 percentage points. So it went from 2020 was 60% passed, 2021 was 57% passed. And I think somebody brought that up at the last board meeting, that it could be because we moved a lot of the, the training classes to online, but we'll do some further analysis on that and report back. The biggest thing that jumped out at the board on the statistics we ran was that in 2020, there were 5,743 licenses issued. And then during 2021, there were 5,419. So we saw a drop in the number of licenses by about 324. So that was a pretty significant drop. And that could have been because of COVID, when we encouraged operators who were going to retire to actually keep their license up, because of COVID and things like that. But a good number of those licenses, a good percentage of those licenses were the combined licenses. So those were old timers, people that had been in the system a long time, and eventually they were going to retire. So we're going to keep our eye on that. So 324. In an effort to address the drop in the operators, we are still providing training courses through Rural Water. RCAP, we met with them recently, and they have other grants. They are offering training courses, so we're still introducing individuals to the VSS D1 T1 training, and that will continue with UMass Amherst once a new ISA is written. I know Mass Waterworks and New England Waterworks are also offering their trainings as well. So we'll continue to try to attract new operators, but just be aware that we did lose about 324 licenses, and that could have, a portion of it could have been that the licenses did upgrades. So they let their D1 or D2 go because they jumped up to a D3. So we still have to tease that data out. But that's it as a summary on the Board of Certification. Also, I'd like to thank the entire Board of Certification for all the work that they do. That would be David Kopis, Blake Lucas, let's see, Bill Saloma, Andy Reed, and Ruth Alfaso. So thanks for all the work that they do, and particularly the people over at the DOL. They're working really hard to try to get the licenses out and keep everything up to date. And that's it. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks, Mike. I think, Josh, you have your hand up for a question.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank
Quick
you.
question. Next time through, could you brief us on how many newly licensed folks there are as well? I'm curious to know how many people are taking the test and getting first-time licenses. It'd be good for us to know.
Sure. There was an increase of about 200 new people coming into the field.
Okay, yeah, because when we're looking to poach them, we need to know where they're going.
Right. You usually go to the PWSs that are paying the least. That seems to be the easiest way. You attract the operators with a higher, fatter paycheck, and that seems to be standard operating procedure. But
All right.
I know Jen's going to tease out some of this data as well, and it'll probably be in a Mass Waterworks newsletter coming up shortly.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. And thanks for joining. And obviously, if there are other questions going forward, thank you for sticking around with us. We also thought it was worthwhile, given all the attention to the drought, to have an update. I think we were all gratified to see the rain today. Could have used a little more, but happy to have what we're getting. But in the meantime, I think we're going to hear from Vandana Rao, known to all of you at the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and Dwayne Levangie are going to talk about the work that they're doing with Water Resources Commission, the Drought Task Force, and the latest information.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thanks to everybody for having me here today. I think many of you may already have had a chance to hear about the drought, how we approach the drought here in Massachusetts, what kind of indices we look at, etc. But I thought I'd run through a presentation that we have given to some water supplies in the past, but just to make sure everybody's sort of on the same page, and we can have a discussion after that. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are seeing it.
Okay, and are you able to see it in presentation mode? Sorry, I have two screens here, so sometimes it's hard for me to...
We're still seeing it in preview mode.
How about now?
There you go.
Okay, terrific. All right, so I'm going to run through these a little quickly, as I think some of you are familiar with the material, but we have a drought management plan here in Massachusetts that was updated in 2019, and we benefited from a lot of lessons learned from the 2016-2017 drought that affected all of us quite a bit, and the state was in a fairly severe to critical drought during that 1.5 to 2 year period. Here in Massachusetts, we look at 6 different indices to give us an idea of how far, whether we are in a normal range or how far beyond or under the normal range we are for precipitation, for stream flow, groundwater, lakes and impoundments, fire danger, and evapotranspiration. For lakes and impoundments in particular, we have a mix of water supply reservoirs and some natural reservoirs. And I do want to take this opportunity to thank those of you who do send us this data on a monthly basis or sometime more often basis, so that we can stay up to date on how that index fares. So I know it's a bit of an extra ask from us to several water suppliers that have this data that they collect and send over to the state for our analysis. So appreciate that. We look at drought as a 5-level system. Level 0 is normal, so it's not really a drought, but anything that is below that, there's a graded level of drought. So level 1, we would consider as a mild drought, level 2, a significant drought, level 3, a critical drought, and level 4, an emergency drought. So just by the levels that you see in those droughts and the name of each of those levels, it just is telling you that there is a graded system of severity here that we look at and declare here in Massachusetts. And we don't look at the state as one big chunk, even though Massachusetts is a relatively small state. We have divided the state into 7 regions, and the boundaries of each of these regions align with the county boundaries. And this is sort of to make it easy for communication and for ease of probably administration at the local level, so people know which region they're at. They're also tied to how the precipitation patterns are different in each of the regions. And several of our droughts in the past have indicated that these regions really do continue to make sense for us to break up the data. So we have the Western region, Connecticut River Valley, Central, Northeast, Southeast, Cape Cod region, and then the Islands region. How is the drought determined? Who looks at the data and who declares it? So just want to take a couple of slides to go through that with you. So there's a drought management task force that is co-chaired by my agency, EEA, and MEMA. And we have several state agencies, as well as some critical partners, including Mass Waterworks Association, that is on the task force. We have some federal agencies that bring some really important expertise to the table as we go through the discussion of data, as well as forecasts and talk through the different indices. So the task force basically comes together with quantitative data and qualitative information on all of these different topics. Obviously, hydrological conditions are right at the top there, and information about the indices that I just went over. But the weather and forecast also plays a role. What are the water supply impacts that we're seeing? Any particular environmental impacts, like to stream flow or wetlands or fisheries or other habitats? Impacts to the agricultural sector. Lately, it seems like that sector is almost always impacted by droughts that we are experiencing during the growing season. Fire danger, another really important aspect that is closely tied to the drought and water supply, and then any other impacts to our infrastructure or to public health. So the task force members bring all of this information to the task force, along with specific data and the indices that we look at. They deliberate and recommend drought levels for each of those 7 regions. So there can be quite an in-depth deliberative process at the task force meetings for where a particular region may land, depending on how each of the indices within that region fare. So this recommendation goes up to the Secretary of EEA, who considers not just the recommendation, but also the discussion that the task force members have. And the Secretary makes the final drought declaration through a press release that EEA puts out shortly after each of our task force meetings. So that's sort of the process that goes into it. The meetings are open to the public. It's a very open process, and we've had several of you attend, including other members of local communities, the press, etc. So here's where we are at today. So we had a task force meeting last week, and thanks to some of the rainfall that the regions received at the end of August, and certainly this first part of September, that's looking quite promising. Most of the regions have held steady, whereas up until then, it was a decreasing level of all of these indices in all the regions starting back in April. The Southeast region has fared particularly well with the rainfall, and so that region got moved from a level 3 drought to a level 2 significant drought. So there's some improvement in the Southeast region. So this map and this drought declaration will stay until the task force meets again and makes the recommendations to the secretary, who in turn will either change the declaration or keep it steady for another month. Our next task force meeting is in early October. So this is where we're at today. So just a little bit about how this may affect all of you. I know many of you have watering restrictions within your communities based on how your own water supply is doing. This is what the state recommends based on what's going on at the regional scale. At a level 1 drought, we really would like people to limit their watering to 1 day a week after 5 p.m. and before 9, especially in the summer and during the last several summers when temperatures have been particularly high over long stretches of time. We really want to minimize that evaporative loss. So want to move any kind of watering that takes place to the evening or early morning hours. At a level 2, our recommendation is for handheld only, again, after 5 p.m. and before 9. And then at level 3 and level 4, when we've already reached that critical level of drought, really cease all non-essential outdoor water use. So I did want to make a little point here about what we've been noticing in the last few droughts that we've had is that critical link between water supply availability and fire protection. We're seeing more and more that with these, with temperatures being high and lasting in the 90s and 100s for multiple days on end, it really is drying out the top 6 to 8 or even 12 inches of the soil. It certainly is drying out tremendously all the vegetation that that is on the ground, and this is causing these fires to start much more quickly and burn much more deeply than before. And the way to put out these fires is water. And when we are in a drought and streams and local pools and small ponds are depleting or completely drying out, the firefighters really have no other place to go than to look for water with their closest water supply system that they may have. And so it's really important that as a water supply community, we're sort of thinking about what additional pressure may be added to our system because of these fires that we may need to suddenly have to supply some water to. So this is something that has been, probably was not part of our consideration for a long time, except cursorily, but it's becoming more and more relevant and important for us to take into consideration through our drought years. So just a little bit on some of the resources that we have available for you. EEA has developed some social media and other outreach resources that any of you can download and use within your own community for your own outreach purposes. You can feel free to download and put your own community logo anywhere in the blanks, the space on these images. I just have pulled out a few that we have available. I'll put the URL at the end so you know where to go to. But we've created images like this that you can put on your own social media posts. We have infographics like what you see here on outdoor water use that goes through the various types of recommendations and actions that we'd like for people to take, and you may want to communicate to your residents in your town. We have a similar one for indoor water use. And we have things like this that are developed specifically for a particular level of drought. So when you know that your region is in a level 2 drought, for example, you can use the level 2 infographic here. These are things that we've developed in the past. We're happy to develop more of these that would be relevant for you to use. So if you think of certain types of messages that would be helpful for you, please, you can feel free to email me and let me know. We're in the process of hiring a consultant to help with developing more of these types of outreach materials and can certainly tailor it to what would work best for you within your town. And finally, some key resources here. We launched about a month or so ago a water impact reporter. So it's an online, I guess you could call it a survey, but it's sort of an online set of questions that anybody in the state of Massachusetts can fill to let us know about how either floods or droughts are impacting you. So it could be somebody with a private well or a farmer, or it could be any of you that are starting to see some issues and you want to communicate that to the state quickly. Go in there. You also have the ability to put some photographs as well as any detailed information on how the current condition is impacting you. And the system stores your report. So you could report something today, and 2 weeks from now, if something is different, you can go back in and send in another report, and it ties it to a particular user. So you can go back and see, look at all the reports that you yourself have submitted, and we can also tie it to you and your location. The other two bullets here are just an overview of the types of resources we do have available. There's a drought management website. If you've not gone to look at it, I would encourage you to do so. mass.gov/drought management will get you there. All the social media resources that I put in earlier slides are available there. Our data is available. We have a drought dashboard with all the indices in there with data and information. So we've worked really hard over the last few years to find a way to get this information to you and other members of the public who are interested. And finally, we also have tips, tools on water conservation. That's on our Water Conservation Toolkit website. So I'll stop there and hand it over to Dwayne to talk about specifics as it relates to the Water Management Act. And happy to take any questions, either now or later on, commissioners, as you feel would be appropriate.
Okay, Dwayne. Yep, we see your screen, Dwayne. Well, we did. Now it's back in preview mode.
Let me, sorry, I had to unmute, and let me retry that again. Vanden can handle 2 screens. I'm one at a time for me. All right, hopefully you can see it now.
Yes, it's in preview mode, but we do see it.
Okay, that's fine. I'll get it. All right, thank you. And hopefully it's appearing the way it should be appearing. And I'm gonna
Looks good.
provide a little more detail on some of the things, how this applies to DEP. Hopefully answer some questions that have popped up repeatedly throughout the drought process, and hopefully give you some potential resources here. So as Vandana said, she actually had a slide that laid out kind of the recommendations in the drought plan. That's the bottom half of my slide, the guidance. Vandana laid it out. Level 1, 1 day a week. Level 2, handheld only. Level 3 and 4, stop non-essential uses. The top half of this permit is what you're required to do. We would certainly encourage folks to do guidance, but one of the most frequent calls and emails I get is, what are we required to do? You're required to do what's in your permits. So if you have a water management permit, I would encourage you all to read that. We have done outreach to you if you haven't notified us, but we really push you guys to get that information into us. You have triggers in your permit that have restrictions going off frequently well before a drought. And then when the drought kicks in, sometimes those conditions get amped up, or a 7-day low flow may amp it up. On the Cape and Islands, we use groundwater. So that, you know, what you're required to do is dictated in your permit. We've repeatedly tried to keep you up to date. There'll be a mailing going out today to all of our registered and permit users, not just public water systems, advising them of last week's drought meeting, the latest drought status, and again, reiterating, check your permits. Another frequently asked question is, what is non-essential water use? And again, this is in your permits. This has evolved over time. So you really want to read what your permit says you may or may not do. You'll see, you know, the top bullet and then its sub bullets, you know, what are not subject to restrictions. Things for health and safety reasons, producing food and fiber, providing water for livestock to meet the core function of business. Then we lay out some of the details of what isn't allowed. And then there's a may. and you can see the May in red. You know, we've built that in over time. Again, these have evolved. One of the most frequent questions we get is parks, recreational fields. Communities can always be more stringent than we require. We do allow these things. Many of you may not. Again, that's a permit or a site-specific call on each individual water supplier's part.
Dwayne, can I just pause you there? Because I think there's the new lawn and new plantings is the months of May and September, not May to September, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Jen. Sorry.
Just wanted to clarify that for folks.
Yeah, and I know you clarified it, and for grabbing another previous version, the two didn't get changed to and, so that is May and September. So public water suppliers are required to tell us when they implement restrictions. It's in the drinking water regulations. You're supposed to tell us within 14 days. I thank you all, many of you who do that. And frankly, if you don't, we usually call up and ask you. And you do a good job of getting in the form. We have a notification form that you can easily fill out and email it back to us. The information that we map and chart is only as good as you get to us. And I can tell you, one of the most frequent calls we get is from people, maybe your customers saying your map is wrong, my town isn't doing something, or they are doing something. So we want, for your own benefit, to reflect what's actually happening in your community, and also the press. The press is all frequently calling us and checking. So my take home from this slide is certainly get us that information. We want to reflect it as accurately as possible. How have we done so far this year? You know, it's been obviously we start tracking this stuff in early May, and then the numbers ballooned in July and August. They blew up to the point where right now we have 174 public water systems implementing restrictions of some type. Of those, 119 are doing 2 days or less of watering allowed. And of that number, 84 are doing no watering allowed at all. Which, going back to the guidance document and the drought plan, those 84 are following what the guidance document is saying. So that's just kind of a snapshot of how things have evolved over the year. This is the visual, the latest map. So again, this is where people call up and they look, and if someone in your town wants to water and the map is saying restrictions are applied, they may call up me and ask why they're doing this, and it's not consistent with the messaging they're getting internally, or vice versa. Maybe it shows nothing in there and your town website saying something different. So again, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to stress getting us that information so we can accurately reflect the status of the situation. The more colors to me that look the same, the better the buy-in here. You know, community to community, you see large patches of communities doing restrictions. It helps when you go from town A to B and similar conditions are being applied. So that was kind of this year in a snapshot. As the commissioner highlighted, we've received rain. I'm hoping we've moved past the worst part of the problem. And now it's about trying to stem the problem from getting worse in the future. One of those is we have a model outdoor water use bylaw that's on our website. Link is in the slide. If you don't have those, and we've had a few systems this year that have had difficulties because their water use, frankly, they just couldn't keep up with it. And they didn't have the ability to restrict non-essential water use. So, you know, between now and town meetings, the time to get this stuff in order. So I'd advise you to look at that if you're interested in it. Feel free to call us to talk about it, but here's one way to get ahead of the next problem year. The always available situation is if there's an emergency, what are we going to do? We have the emergency deck process whereby you can request an emergency if you're having problems keeping up with your demand, have a pump failure, have a water quality issue, that ability, exists. You should check with your drinking water program chief, and those are noted at the back end of the presentation, or give me a call as well. You've got some details here about the pressure maintenance requirements and the notification to the drinking water program that you need to follow in regulations, an update about the emergency response plans, and communicate, stay in contact obviously with your public health and safety folks should problems arise. And we have not had an emergency declaration issued this year. Kudos to all of you for weathering the lack of storms, and hopefully we move forward and continue that. We have put out, and again, I even had a call today, someone was questioning whether they should flush or not. I made it clear that we do not say you can't flush. We were asking people to delay the flushing if possible, provided it doesn't prevent water quality issues. And if that is a concern, you should certainly check with your drinking water program chief to discuss that. Again, I think hopefully we're past that, but maybe another week or two of delaying it to see how conditions improve wouldn't be the worst thing. But again, water quality is the driver in a lot of that. I've already kind of laid out the emergency deck process. We've made it through the summer, so unless some water quality or some other things pop up, I won't really get into the details on the emergency deck process. Another way we can help is, so we have 2 grants that we issue out of the water management program. One is, we'll call it the water management grant, which we have funded drought management plans. And so they're an eligible grant. And the other grant, I mean, it can include other things, minimization, mitigation kind of permit requirements are certainly part of that grant. And the other grant is the water audit grant. So we will pay for water systems to do a water audit. We hire the consultant, they'll work with you to develop it, so you can ideally capture where your water is coming and going from. In case of a drought, if you have a significant out-of-counter for water over time, we want to get those down to help weather these drought situations. The grants are probably going to be available coming out in late September, early October this year. We will get notice out when they are available and posted. We'll get that information to Jen, and she can circulate it to those interested in applying. And with that, I'll just say that, here's your drinking water chiefs. Most of you probably know who they are, and probably have their phone numbers on your speed dial. My number and email is on there as well. And I think that really covers kind of our situation at this point. So
if I may add, I just put a PDF in the chat window that has these resources that Dwayne has just put up on the screen, as well as many other drought-related links and contact information from different agencies. So you can feel free to download that. Thank you.
And I'll just say that we are co-hosting with EEA tomorrow a drought messaging roundtable, and Carol and I will be putting together this roundtable to hear from folks about those social media graphics that Vandana displayed, and whether or not people have suggestions of what would be helpful for them from a drought messaging standpoint. So I put that link probably further back in the chat at this point, but if you're interested in providing input on that, we'll be happy to have you join us tomorrow. All right, Commissioner.
Okay, terrific. Thanks. And thanks to Vandana and Dwayne, both for the presentation and for sticking around in case there are questions in the Q&A part. I wanted to make sure we had just a little bit of time before we go to questions and answers to provide a short update. As you know, this is a remarkable time, as Jane mentioned, with new sources of federal funding coming in. in addition to what we usually talk about when we're talking about financing projects. So I thought I'd turn the floor over to Maria Pinot, the head of our SRF program, who works closely with our partners in the Clean Water Trust, for an overview of the funding, the latest on funding.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm very pleased to report that Massachusetts has been awarded the additional supplemental funding for the 2022 projects. We received approximately $200 million to support the SRF program. And this figure includes the state match funds. I believe that we are the first state in the nation to receive this funding, so it is a huge day for us. This funding provides added program capacity for loans, but more significant is that also provides added principal forgiveness for disadvantaged communities. So I encourage everybody to participate in this and take advantage of this funding. I'm also pleased to report that most of the 22 projects in the drinking water IUP are proceeding despite all the many challenges presented by the supply chain issues and that have resulted in added costs and extended timelines. But we continue to work with borrowers to ensure their projects are completed. The 2022 IUP was amended to provide financing for lead service line inventories and replacement plans. And these loans are for 100% principal forgiveness. And we are accepting applications that started on July 1st, and we have already processed a number of them. And interest has been very high. So I do anticipate receiving many more applications in the months to come. In addition, we are also offering financing for PFAS design for emergency projects this year. So if anybody is interested on obtaining that financing, please reach out to me and I'll be able to assist you. For the 2023 financing cycle, the solicitation period just closed this past August 12th. And we received a very strong response. There are approximately 113 new construction proposals for drinking water and 12 asset management planning projects at a total cost of about $1.2 billion. And this is just for clean drinking water. We are currently evaluating all the proposals and ranking them to develop the draft intended use plan that we hope to have available by before the end of the year to initiate the public review process and have a final IUP ready for early next year. We do intend to apply for the supplemental BIL funds to implement the 2023 IUP project. So we expect to offer a similar financing in amounts and also the number of projects that have significantly increased. We are offering twice the number of projects that we used to previously when we didn't have the BIL funding. So if anybody is interested in learning more about this funding and how to apply, please reach out to me. I'm available to meet with you and go over your projects. And that concludes my update. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Maria. And thanks for the presentation. And thanks for sticking around in case there are any questions we have. So with that now, I think we are going to, questions that we've gotten. Kathy, I know that you worked with Jen. Jen had some questions that were already brought in. So why don't we go through what we've already gotten in writing, what the questions and the answers are. I don't know if it's you and Yvette or you and Yvette and others who are going through this, but however you want to proceed through the three questions, I think we already got, so.
Okay, sure. Whoops. Do I have the mute? I'm unmuted. Okay, good.
You're unmuted. Yep.
And let me just bring those questions up. So, Yvette, if you, if I don't know if you can see the questions, I'm happy to read them off. are happy to let you do the whole thing. So it's whatever your preference is.
If you can read them off, I will do the answers. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So the first question is, when does DEP plan to provide the next 3-year PWS sampling schedules for 2023 through 2025?
As you all know, we've been working very hard to try to get our sampling schedules out the door. But the plan right now is to make sure that all water suppliers will have their 2023 to 2025 sampling schedules no later than the last day of this year. In the interim, the regions continue to work one-on-one with water suppliers on their sampling schedules. So we are encouraging water suppliers to continue to work directly with their drinking water chiefs or contacts while we get the fully electronic schedule out to you. We will start in mid-October, but it will take us towards until the ending of the year till we have all of the schedules out, because we are doing them in batches, and it will depend on your region and what are your specific sampling requirements. So that's the answer to the first question.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see now. The next one is, when will the waiver applications be available?
Our plan is to provide the waiver applications by October 1st. We are taking the old form and doing some updates to it to make it more accessible electronically. And the plan is to have that go out by October 1st of this year.
And finally, the third question is about what looks like a requirement for a cross-connection license renewal. So the question is, for cross-connection license renewal, appears there is a new requirement at the end of the application confirmation email. And this was the first time an operator had seen this, and he almost missed it apparently. So there's language at the bottom that says, to meet federal reporting requirements for EPA's cross-media electronic reporting rule, you are required to print this entire email and to sign the below certifying that you have submitted the application identified in this email. And so you need to sign it and then mail it to DEP. And so the question is also, why does the form have to be physically mailed back when so much of what DEP is asking operators to do now is submit online? And so I know you had prepared a fairly lengthy explanation about requirements by EPA. And if you want to go ahead, that's great, or I can read them off for you.
There is a CROMER requirement, and CROMER stands for Cross-Media Electronic Reporting Rule. It's the legal framework for electronic reporting under Title 40 of the Code of Federal Regulations for EPA and state, tribes, and local governments. And this rule is intended to make sure that the information that you get reported is from the party that's supposed to report it. And you can imagine this is important with all of the cybersecurity issues. However, the cross-connection form is not one of the required federal programs under the CROMER rule. So our new system for the Acela system actually put in the CROMER rule for all of the forms that come into us, but we will make informational changes so that for the cross-connection form, it will be clear that you only have to submit the electronic document and that the hard copy is not necessary. because this particular program is not one of the federal programs. Right now, we are receiving the e-form as well as the hard copy form. We are filing those hard copy forms and taking no actions one way or the other, but they're not delaying our review of the cross-connection form. So short answer is that is one of these oversights that we need to fix on the webpage, and we will do so. And thank you for the question, because in this era of all of these cybersecurity issues, Chrome is very important, but we do want to only require that where it's necessary. So I believe we will be putting these questions and answers out in maybe the next in domain or on the web page so that you can see the specific response.
Yvette, could I just go back to the first part of the question? Is this a new requirement to submit that for the cross-connection license?
It would be new because it showed up on the new Acela reporting platform, which is new for our permitting programs. So it would appear like if it were new, but Chrome has been out there for some time. But for anyone using the Acela platform, you know, for the first time, that would be the first time they would be seeing it in this fashion.
Yeah, I could extend that a little bit, Jen. For those of you who are familiar with submitting things on EDEP, either the ASR or your laboratory doing water quality, we do have to collect a paper, what's called a proof, that's signed and notarized by those submitters, and that's just to comply with Chrome Air. So those reports are subject to Chrome Air under Title 40.
Commissioner, those were the questions that we received in advance. I don't know if you want to have folks unmute just to see if there are other questions.
Sure, this is a good opportunity if folks want to ask anything further.
Kathy and Marty, I have one more bit of information that I wanted to share.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. We talked about getting ready for the lead and copper revisions that are upcoming, and EPA talked about funding and the lead service line or the service line inventory guidance that's out. The drinking water program fully intends to get our regulations in place for the lead and copper rule revisions. And we have also released our information and tools regarding service line inventory, a crowdsourcing app to where water suppliers can work with their consumers to help them to identify lead service lines in the home, and a one-page forum to get some better understanding of what water suppliers are planning as it relates to removal of lead service lines. We have a training scheduled for the 28th of this month from 10 to 12, and I believe the invitations went out today. And I want everyone to, well, all water suppliers, community and non-transient, non-community systems to participate in this training and to come with, questions so that we can figure out how best we can be helpful as we work towards getting ready for the lead and copper rule revisions.
That training is the 29th.
It's the 29th?
I just pasted it in chat for folks.
So it's a Thursday?
Yep. Thursday the 29th, 10 to noon.
Thank you for that correction.
And that's in chat with the link that you can use to sign up.
And it's an automatic registration. So once you go in, we will capture, who's going to be on for that day. Thank you.
Back to you, Commissioner.
Okay, thanks. I think we're gonna see if there are any questions from any of the participants or comments or anything that folks wanted to follow up on.
If I may, Commissioner, so one of the things that we are interested in hearing about is, especially during a drought, or even if any of you have some water quality issues that may need for you to connect immediately to the neighboring community, or some other system that you may have a connection to but haven't exercised that in a few years or decades. Are there sort of such infrastructure needs that you may have? So, just to kind of build that local resilience to droughts, certainly, we're just trying to get a better sense of what those needs may be overall. So it's not something that I'm looking for a response right away, but if there are such sort of needs at the local level, it would be great to hear about them.
And Vandana, if somebody did, thinking about this, want to follow up and respond, what would be the best way to respond?
They can email it to me, or actually emailing it to me is best. So let me just put my email address in the chat room.
Well, I'm
Thanks.
not seeing any questions in chat. Anyone need to unmute? I know we did have one person on the phone. That's *6 if you need to unmute. Maybe that person's already gone. Well, you covered a lot of information today. We'll say that on behalf of my membership, many are feeling very overwhelmed, and it's clear to see why, that there is a lot going on and a lot to pay attention to. And so we, look forward to working closely with you all as this plays out over the fall. I know the chemical supply chain issues are still very real for folks, and certainly this concern about the railway issue. I'm glad you asked that, Commissioner, because it is especially important from the chlorine standpoint. So I know WBUR is going to be doing some sort of piece on the challenges that water suppliers are facing on Thursday. So stay tuned to the radio on that. But certainly there are a number of pressing issues that folks are dealing with. So Commissioner, thank you again for your willingness, you and all of your staff, to commit to these quarterly meetings. I think it's very helpful. And we will get that recording posted for folks. And I guess we'll stay tuned to future meetings as we get towards November.
Right.
And the transition.
I think we fit in one more in December, so we're gonna aim for that. And then one other thing, the reason maybe why it's good to have it in December, we in headquarters and maybe in our Northeast office may or may not have been moved by then. Northeast lost its lease and needed to move to another facility. We are, implementing the hybrid model, and so we may be relocating to Cambridge Street. So we might provide a little bit of a primer on where to mail stuff. Hopefully people need to mail paper less, apropos of our earlier discussion, but still there's some things, or where even to find us. So we might spend a little bit of time in December talking about that.
Great. So I think December 6th is the date that we had selected. So stay tuned and we'll get some information out on that. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. And we'll pray for a little more rain, and I hope everybody has a good day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.